Good morning, Coalition of Concerned Republicans. It's Mike Levine with Restoring Our American Republic here. As always, I have my good friend and colleague Chuck Benoit with us, and today we have a special guest, Mr. Tim Wilkins, who's running for Congress in Congressional District 11, which takes up a huge part of our footprint here in Lake Sumter and southwest Orange County. So, wow, what a race. This is a huge race. And, it's so amazing that, typically in a congressional race like this, we'd have 18 months, to vet these guys and girls out and, let them come out to a million different events and speak to us and everything. But no, this is going to go down in about 9 weeks, which is really crazy, right? So, I was informed yesterday. I didn't know we're going to have a couple of debates, but, that'll be really fun. So anyway, who are the players? We have Nizam Razack in this race, who is a brain surgeon, I understand, and also a lawyer of Indian descent, who was born outside of the country, so he's not a naturally born American citizen. Some people believe that we should change the rules, and people who are not naturally born citizens should not hold positions in Congress. I tend to agree with that concept. So that's Nizam Razack. He's point number one. We have our good friend Tim Wilkins, who's with us here today. We're going to spend some time with him. And, of course, we have the famous, illustrious Carey Baker running in this race. And we have a guy by the name of Joe Strada, who's a really interesting subject. This guy runs an air conditioning company, and he's doing business in 6 states. I read on his website that he does about $1.2 billion in revenue, employs 4,000 people, and started a schools because he probably couldn't find the trade skills to actually do his AC, electrical, and plumbing work that his company's doing. But all of a sudden, this guy pops out of nowhere and pledges $5 million of his own money into this race. So it's pretty interesting. But let me tell you the really interesting part of this, okay? Back in 2022, I believe, Taylor Yarkowski was running for his first term in the Florida House, and Carey Baker endorsed Taylor Yarkowski. But Taylor Yarkowski was spotted yesterday walking through the lobby of University of Florida Health over in Leesburg with our entire legislative delegation with Joe Strada in tow. And, of course, Joe Strada is running against Carey Baker. So what does that do, for the political machine here in Lake County? Makes it really interesting. And, of course, our friend Tom Vail, who ran against Taylor Yarkowski in 2022 and lost by 400 votes in a three or four way race, is running against Taylor again. So it'll be really interesting to see how these dynamics play out. But we really need to get Tim Wilkins on screen right now. So let me bring Chuck on real quick. Okay, there's Tim. But Chuck, why don't you come on with us? Come on with us. So, yeah. So, Tim, Chuck, do you mind if I just ask Tim to kind of comment on my opening comments?
Well, go ahead.
Tim, what do you think?
I think your comments were a factual laying out of the players in the game without any color necessarily. And then you did bring up the point yesterday. So I brought it up to you when I talked to you yesterday that they had just put out a big press release of Joe Strada basically taking half of the state and county representatives from that area, from Lake County. So if Carey thought that that Lake County he had in the bag, they just cut that bag in half.
Well, here's the interesting part about that, Chuck and Tim. The amazing part is that in politics, what you see is only like the tip of the freaking iceberg. You know what I mean? What's going on behind the scenes is even more interesting, right?
Here's what I have to ask you both.
Go ahead.
Mike, I have to ask you. So Strada doesn't live in the district. And I'll go ahead and say I'm the only one who actually does live in the district. Right. So Strada not being in the district, he keeps thinking he's some Trump insider. There's no evidence of him really donating to too many people throughout the last 10 years for a guy that does, gross $1 billion in business across 13 states.
13.
What was the onus for all of these elected officials? Was it animosity? Was it political expediency? What was the onus for this 4 to 6 guys jumping on board?
Well, no, let me explain that real quick. And they, I don't have any evidence to support this actually, but I do have a lot of experience in this. And basically, these guys, and when you go interview with the Republican National Committee to run for a congressional seat, they ask a lot of really hard questions. How much of your money do you have to bring to the game? Will you do this and that? How much money will you raise for the party if you were to get elected? Those kind of things. And then of course you are going to do as you're told, right? You're going to vote the way we tell you to vote, and especially when you're new, you're going to keep your mouth shut. Right? You're going to be like a little family of waddling ducks behind mama, and we're going to tell you what to do. And my instincts tell me that that's what happened here, Tim.
Well, that's funny because Strada's first commercial was literally called "Washington is full of crap." So apparently he doesn't know how to waddle.
Don't even get me started. Okay, we're going to talk about this more because this is kind of in the context of what the structure of our interview, today is about. But I'm telling you right now, and you and I met a month ago, 2 months ago,
6-8 weeks ago at tops.
Yeah. I mean,
feels
I
like
love,
100.
and this is the point, because I got to tell you something. I love Carey Baker, right? I'd like to consider him a friend. I would, although I don't think we've really crossed that threshold in all these years. Okay, Carey Baker and I, we are very frank. We have very frank discussions about what's what. I like Carey Baker. He put his arm around me one time at a Lincoln Reagan dinner, and he asked me, "Are we friends?" Right? And I said, "Carey, you're the smartest guy I know. You've got an amazing personality. You're witty and funny and fun to be around, and I really enjoy all my time that I spend with you. But politically, we're typically on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I'm willing to." I told the same thing to my father when I had a little fallout with my dad. I said, "Dad, I'm willing to work on it. Are you?" And that's the question, right? I mean, honestly. People have to, in order for relationships to grow, we have to work on these things. No different than a marital relationship, right? And, so that's where we are. I love Carey Baker. He's a great guy. I respect him. He's got he's created a great public image over his entire life. His father was a state rep. He certainly knows his way around politics for sure. But the question becomes, and, here's what we talked about even yesterday, Tim, when you interviewed with the Republican Assembly in Sumter, right? The issues are really a non-issue. Everybody's going to put on their website, what the polling says the hot issues are. That's the point I'd like to make on this particular subject. So it doesn't matter what you say or what Carey Baker says or Nizam Razack or Joe Strada. This is just red meat for the base, okay? Here's what I want to know. Behind the scenes, what are you going to do for us politically, okay? How are you going to help us achieve our goals for median, and my personal passion is helping median household income families afford to live a American dream lifestyle in the state of Florida. That's really all I care about, Tim. Chuck, you have something to say about this?
Yeah, well, I'd just like to formulate a question and get Tim's answer. So,
Chuck is rigorous into this kind of stuff. He doesn't like freewheeling, Tim. I'll do this for the rest of the show, but Chuck is going to keep us to the format, okay?
There you go.
So I think I sensed a question in there, Chuck.
Yeah, well, okay. The question on our little thing is what differentiates you from the other five? And I think, right, Mike's kind of question put us there. So
we're going to go back to freewheeling now.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I'll tell you, Mike doesn't have a lot of passion for the subjects he talks about, so I'll have to expand on that. So in that realm, and Mike has called me out on this, but this is a blessing and a curse. I am someone who builds alliances. I am someone who goes up and gets into the right groups very, very quickly for whatever reason, and I already made those inroads by going to D.C. But to the end of the discussion Mike and I did not get to have, at my core, I'm a Marine, and I'm a fighter. And when I have something that needs to be fixed, like the bloat that is the bureaucracy, like the waste, fraud, and abuse that is our everyday, like the trillions we send around the world and we print money, by not printing that money for things that don't serve America, by not allowing that waste, fraud, and abuse, and actually making cuts, not in future spending, but actual spending, we could not have to print money, which causes inflation. By not giving benefits to people from other countries who come here illegally, we'll have those benefits for other people, or not having those people here, which we need to expedite the deportations. We will not have people using our subsidized tax dollars driving up the cost of food, housing, cars, auto insurance for the underinsured. All those things could mean hundreds or thousands of dollars for working families every year that have to reach deeper into their pocket because someone is competing for the same things using their own tax money. Those are the like non-starters for me. When I get up there, someone has got to actually say, let's open the books and wonder why our checkbook is out of balance by 40 trillion.
Chuck?
There you go. There you go. Another aspect of all of this is, who's the Trumpite, who's the MAGA guy, and what we find in most of Republicanism is that there are very few genuine MAGA Republicans. The Senate and the House in Washington fight against Donald J. Trump and his agenda. How can you, or where are you in regard to President Trump's agenda, and how do you think you could change Congress for the benefit of Donald J. Trump?
I'm really excited to drop these names, Chuck. I was actually one of the first people, as everyone on this realm and this race claims an allegiance to Donald Trump or some kind of connection. I was literally one of the first people to campaign for him in 2015 and 2016 on stage. So that was my original connection. When I walked backstage and saw his financial board that he was going to use for advisement, at the next stop, it was his national security team. That's what really sold me on voting for Trump. Now, how can I make a difference? Well, a couple of weeks ago, we went up and met with Speaker Johnson, Leader Scalise, a couple others. And one of the big things that we're getting is, like in Congress, we'll have an amazing piece of Trump-driven legislation that is truly America first, that is not necessarily full of bloat, and we'll have 5 to 6 to 7 defectors that keep that from getting, when we've got a majority, that razor-thin majority, we can't have 7 defectors. So one of my jobs right away is going to be messaging and assisting to rally the troops, and not being one of those dirtbags that takes a great piece of legislation and makes it fail because I'm having a tantrum on Tuesday about a tweet or a Truth Social post. So you're one of 435 people. In a sense, you could be one of 217, but your job is, when it's time, push the right legislation and not get in the way. So that's going to be priority one.
There you go, Chuck. Come back.
There you go. I'm here.
All right, there you go.
So it's hard. I'm not asking you to speak for the other candidates in the race, but are they kind of running on the same platform you are? What is your distinctive platform?
Well, it is interesting. So I think Mike just touched on it a minute ago. As Republicans, and we didn't poll for and survey for talking points. I took talking points, and over the course of the last 6 to 8 weeks, have actually developed those by speaking to the groups, talking to the people before and after, and diving in on what's affecting people, especially in the villages and Lake County. That's the vast majority of the places I've spoken. We all have, it's a pretty basic plate of Republican agenda items right now. Immigration, healthcare. Well, I'm a little more healthcare focused than. So you look at Dr. Razack, who is a big proponent of reducing healthcare costs. Here's a guy who's the reason they're so high. He literally has partnered with all the biggest ambulance chasers in our area, and his JD, his law degree, he trumps up. Oh God, I hate to use that word. He increases. Trump has been blessed. He increases the settlements through more surgeries and more work, and then serves as his own expert witness in court to drive up those settlements. So how dare this guy say, hey, my job is to champion lower costs? You literally have become a multi-millionaire on the backs of the people paying into the system. So let's just dispel that right away. But yeah, we all have basically the same things. What differentiates me is already with the couple of weeks ago that we went up there, the ability to make alliances and allegiances to, if I get a bill, I can go around to the new 20 friends I made in a day and get co-sponsors, get people that will sign on, that will put things to committee that will actually get them done. I don't know that the team that's assembled out there running, Carey's got experience legislatively, but will he push the hard bills? So I've got the veterans experience. Carey and I are the only veterans. I got the business experience and 30 years of communication to actually push legislation and actually go out to the media and push that legislation. My 30 years in TV and radio and political talk radio, to actually try to push things across all boundaries.
Okay, I want to be in here. Let me in. Because I got to tell you, Tim, I am not concerned about policy at all. honestly, the policy is total BS. What I want is to get the boot off the throat of grassroots activists, people who are engaged in politics. We know what's good for this state. We know what's good for this country, and our politicians obstruct. So, for example, the Republican Party of Florida is kicking out America First Republicans out of the Republican executive committees all over this state, and that is not unknown to our Floridian Republican National Committee Chairman, Joe Gruters, who, don't get me, I don't even go into it, right? But I'm just saying to you, America First Republicans are being extricated from the party. They have literally stood in our meetings and looked me and others in the eye, and they say, if you're not willing to come online with whatever it is we want, then why don't you just leave the party? They've invited me to quit my local REC. Keith Truenow, our state senator from this district, has looked me in the eyes on multiple occasions and asked me, Mike Levine, why don't you just quit? He's looked me right in the eyes and said that. And he was touring the hospital with Taylor Yarkowski and Joe Strada, I think yesterday. We had people from the REC reported to us, hey, well, I'm sitting in the lobby of this hospital, and I'm seeing our legislative delegation walk through the lobby with Joe Strada, who none of us have ever met. We've never, other than Brian Kennedy, we've never had a conversation with this guy, and our legislative team is all behind this guy, and they never discussed it with us. What about the word representative? Do you not understand, Tim?
The whole thing blows my mind. I don't understand it. And people in the grassroots, the best thing I can dream of in this election and more is to tell the powers that be, push candidates of quality, because that's one of the things I've talked about with the leaders up in DC. You guys want to just sit back, or say you're sitting back from the election and not let things happen. But you know your fingers are on the scale, yet you're giving us candidates year after year that we don't want. We have to hold our nose at the ballot box because it's got an R next to it. The grassroots need to continue to push candidates across the finish line to tell the powers that be, you either need to partner with us or get out of the way, because this is who the people want. And that, I think, is going to start to wake them up to your money and your endorsements don't mean anything if the people don't want them.
Okay, well, that's another interesting thing. Chuck, I'm going to give you a chance to pop in here before I get on another tirade.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you want to tirade, go right ahead. But I guess looking at these questions here, what is the state of the U.S. housing market, and what recommendations would you make related to housing, and in particular, should the feds reduce interest rates to increase the housing market?
Well, interest rates should be reduced, not because of the housing market, but because that's the right thing to do to spur the economy and get us moving. They're not as high as they were back in the 70s and 80s per se, or even sometimes in the 90s or 2000s when they're up in the 9 to 15 range. But in this market with things so much higher price, it would certainly spur things. But here's the problem with the housing market. First of all, we let in 20 to 50 million people who are now vying for that same housing. If it's apartments, that's driven up rent on working families. If it's houses, that's driven up housing prices. We had to stop private equity and the banks from buying up the houses and reducing the supply and driving up the prices. I'm glad that's being put to a stop. Legislation's in place. They're moving forward to increase that. That had to be done. I don't think there's as big a shortage by the time we thin the herd a little bit. And by the time you get the housing availability open for rental market and housing, and the private industry will catch up. We need to reduce some of the barriers to building. There's a lot of barriers there. Like California, you're looking at 2 to 5 years to rebuild after the fire if you're lucky, because it's just buried in costly red tape. So save the red tape for parades. This is just garbage. They need to reduce the red tape, the barriers. It would be nice if they reduced the interest rates by 1% or 2% and get them down to where that's going to drop the average payment $1,000 a month. So families on real incomes can afford these things, not the people that are just strung out on credit. And we don't need to create any new programs that recreate the 2008 housing crash with subprime mortgages. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
Chuck, I want to weigh in on that. Tim, you and I off camera or whatever, we don't have time to beat up this housing market thing today, but I have a completely different point of view. Not that yours is, honestly.
Say it. It's wrong, Mike. Say it's wrong.
No. I'm just saying to you that most people don't understand this, okay? When you subsidize housing, you drive the price of housing. So if you want to get the housing market under control, you stop subsidizing housing purchases, period, right? Stop. I don't like government insured loans, right? Let local banks decide what their underwriting guidelines are instead of, delegating underwriting guidelines to Fannie Mae, right? I mean, those are the things you do to get the housing thing under control. I just want to say about interest rates, right? Do you know that seniors, because of low interest rates, can't get a decent, seniors should be able to live off a CD interest. And when interest rates are low, there's two sides to the coin. The only reason that the Fed should lower interest rate is to reduce the cost of our national debt. That's it. Okay? Other than that, I like interest rates around 7 or 8%. Okay? Because that gives retired seniors, they can drop their money into a totally financially secure certificate of deposit and cover their living expenses every month. Because I'm not a fan of, I hate low interest. Free. Nobody gives people the use of their money for free, Tim. Nobody does.
No, but so here's where we're in place where I will gladly disagree with you. I like everything you said about subsidizing. The interest rates, though, transcend into the corporate market, where corporate lending creates jobs and builds buildings and expands things. And that's a level or two above the housing market. So if the prime is at 4.5 and lending rates are at 6.25, that's somewhat affordable. You move into an 8 to 10 to 12% corporate rate, and then that stifles growth across the board. So we have to find a little bit lower rate to make sure that corporate growth is growing to create the good jobs that let people buy houses.
Well, if you want to be innovative, and we are now in a rabbit hole, okay? But if you want to be innovative, from whatever the case might be, we can figure that out. I'm speculating now, which is never a good idea. So let's move on. Chuck, we need you now, Chuck. Let's back to focus here.
Okay. Yeah, having a little trouble with your audio. I don't know what you're going to be able to do about it, Mike, but what about veterans? Is there anything out there that is different that you would do for our veterans and first responders that anybody else would do, or are we all pretty much on the same page there?
I think we're all pretty much on the same page, but I've already gone around as a American Legion member to all the posts to make sure that I've touched base with what they need, the VFWs. I've touched base with the VA. I'm a forward worker. I don't wait till things are already a problem, and I don't know about my compatriots, but I've already made all the inroads at the top in the VA and where the need is at the veteran level to put the pieces in place for constituent services the day I hit office. And I'm going to staff up a little deeper than the previous administration in this district and make sure the veterans are taken care of. I've already gotten the endorsement of a couple of veterans agencies, one that I've released publicly, and they've already started to give me the things I need to fight for with some disability ratings that are being taken away. I just think that more focus needs to be put on the people that have served admirably, who have been injured or having issues. And one of the big things that I can tell you that everybody else isn't thinking about, because I'm still heavily involved in this, is veterans transitional services between service and civilian life. And I hope they're not watching, because don't steal this, guys. This is mine. I've actually helped a ton of my veteran friends make the transition, and now I have a podcast that just started up a few months ago called Fit to Serve. And my next episode that tapes July 10th actually deals with someone who created a massive charity, a Marine veteran who created a massive charitable organization that helps people transition and get the mental and physical help they need to get the job they want.
Very, very, very awesome. Also, I understand that you've co-founded a school. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's a 160 student school down in Celebration. It's the longer of the story is that my wife's son, who passed of cancer about 14 years ago, went there, and they were in need of some financial assistance to keep up and running. And she loved the school and everything it stood for. So we slowly took it over about 8 years ago. And we love having the kids, big and small, run around there and do their thing. And it's a wonderful opportunity. One of the greatest things about this state, well, there's so many, has been giving families the opportunity to get a private education and allowing them. And that's reduced one of the big barriers to entry for private schools. So we're glad we've got just a robust and very full school population.
Sounds good. Very good. So,
Alrighty then.
Well, let's talk about farmers for a minute. What do you think Florida farmers are looking for? Are they all trying to get rid of their land and live happily ever after, or what?
No, the farmers we know are third and fourth generation family farmers. This is what they know and this is what they love. But they're still waiting on money from the hurricane in 2016. They're still waiting for their FEMA and disaster money. They've had citrus canker. They've had greening, which is another thing that was brought in, an invasive thing. And we just had a giant freeze that killed most of the citrus industry and some of the other industries, sod and a couple others that are just now bouncing back. And they're just not getting the help they need. So they need a liaison up there to kick in Brooke Rollins' door and go, okay, we're 10 years deep on our last relief check. And they're not asking for subsidies. They're not asking for bailout. What they're asking for, a lot of people don't know this, that the average farm family has to actually take out a loan predicated on the proposed or perceived harvest for the upcoming year. And the hard part of that is if it fails, they're under. What they're asking is to create some semblance of safety net, especially with the way they've been through for the last 10 years, to give them the leeway to ramp back up and grow. To not be self-sustaining in this country, to rely that much on foreign food. We noticed this during COVID, even with medicine. The same country that gave us COVID was sending us our Advil and our antihistamines. Are we out of our minds? So we had to learn and see how dependent we were for food from the rest of the world, and just make sure we're growing here. Whatever it takes, we've got to go back. We've got the richest soil and year-round sun. We've got to make sure the farmers are looked after.
There you go. Any thoughts on that, Mike?
I agree.
There you go.
I interviewed with the Florida Ag Coalition 2024, and they were concerned about water, right? Hey, Mike, in Florida, we don't own the water. We allocate the water. What do you think? How should we allocate the water? And I told the farmers, I said, you guys get everything you need, and we use whatever's left over. And I was serious, okay? Again, actually, one of those guys on the Ag Coalition called Carey Baker after my interview. And Carey, hey, how was your interview with Levine? He said, Mike Levine's trying to save the world. I painted a very illustrious picture of the Garden of Eden and everything from Pensacola to Key West, and all of our interstate highways should be lined with farms and stuff like that. And that was my vision for it. And I'm not kidding you. I think that's really the way it should be. And I also know, Tim, that we have the ability to do that if we want to. Again, that's what's really frustrating for me about politics is we have the ability to do. I actually I was emceeing the Lincoln Reagan dinner when I was chairman a few years ago, and I literally stood in front of 350 of all of Lake County's elected officials and stakeholders, right? And I said, hey, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Ronald Reagan told us that the big decisions in our lives are made around the dinner table. So it looks to me like we could we can make Lake County, Florida, whatever we want it to be right here tonight. All the players are here. Why don't we take a 30-minute break? Everybody, instead of hanging out with the people around your table, why don't we all walk around and talk to everybody at every other table? And then by the end of the night, we'll have a public policy program that we can implement tomorrow, and Lake County will be the most beautiful, prosperous place with no poverty or anything like that. And we have all the tools in our toolbox to do that. The question is, we don't have the will. It's not the ability to do it, Tim. It's the will to do it. And I'll turn the floor over to Tim and see if he has any comments on and of course, boy, I tell you, Tim, if you want to see, they were really concerned that night when they said, oh my God, who is this guy who has infiltrated Lake County, right? And he comes and hits us with that kind of stuff. I also told them that we should trash all the laws and we should just live off the 10 Commandments. And Jeff Atwater, who has endorsed Carey Baker, by the way, was at my table in the room and agreed with me that we should just trash the laws. We'll live off the 10 Commandments. We're good.
Love it. Mike Levine, the Chris Rock of Lincoln Reagan dinners.
There you go.
It's a wonder what did you MC the next year, or was that it, Mike?
Well, I was the chairman, right? So I did serve 2 terms as chairman. So I was there for 4 years as the chairman of the Lake County Republican Executive Committee. And believe me, it was a dog. I have a very strange relationship, with Lake County leadership. It's very hard to tell sometimes. No. They've told me to my face that they hate me. So,
going back to your premise, I love your premise. First of all, I love your premise of letting the farmers take the first batch of water and letting us figure it out. All of Florida doesn't need to look like a golf course. Personally, I hate my lawn. It's a lot of work. It's a mix of bahia and St. Augustine and weeds and, thistles. So I've been stationed in the desert. If we have to xeriscape and make things a little more drought tolerant and put rocks across portion of it, go for it to make sure that we actually eat. I can't believe we're wiping out this much farmland. Every time we do this, we put solar panels down that work about 8 hours of the day. And then we wonder why we don't have food because we put that on a farm. The whole thing, I don't understand some of the thought processes. And like you said, I don't understand the thought process without, is it control? Is it money? What is it that would make someone think that not honoring and forwarding the farm bureaus and making sure the farmers have what they need a priority? How does that happen?
I can't answer the question for you.
There you go.
If Chuck lets me.
Well,
I'm going to turn it back over to Chuck because I will run into that rabbit hole. You know I will.
Well, I'll
Go
give
ahead,
you.
Chuck.
I'll give you a minute or two. We are, believe it or not, out of time. So, Tim, I'm going to put you on this screen, and why don't you just give us your final argument as to why we should be sending you to CD11.
Okay, wait a second,
Oh,
Chuck. If you don't
okay.
mind, I'd like to make my final close first and let Tim consider my comments right now about why we do these things that are not good for people. Okay.
Okay.
And then Tim may want to factor that into his closing remarks.
Okay. Closing remarks.
The reason that we don't do things that are good for median household income families is because the people who make the rules don't live in the same fishbowl that median household income families live in. So at the end of the day, if you're a ruling class elite in Florida or anywhere else around the country, right, you're never going to have a problem with groceries, right? You're always going to be able to buy groceries from foreign countries. You got plenty of money, this and that. So it's not really about the cost at the grocery store. It doesn't really impact you. And it goes into every other financial decision that you make because the people running our state and the people running our country, and I'm going to set Ron DeSantis aside for a second, okay? Because Ron DeSantis has done some really great things for us. And of course, I've been a critic of DeSantis when I need to be a critic of DeSantis, okay? But I am saying to you that the elites in this country have a disdain for rank and file people. And we do the things that we do that make absolutely no sense because it doesn't affect them at all. Tim.
So Mike is prescient yet again. So you would, and Chuck, you were right. I do want to incorporate this into my final statement because I think where Mike is on the exact path that I would like to talk about is one of the reasons that things don't change is because the people don't change. Congress has that 17% approval rating, yet we send the same career politicians back year after year and expect things to be any different. They're disconnected from the laws they pass and how they affected us. They're disconnected from the fact that when they get up there and don't pass a budget and they wait till the economy's been shut down for 10 weeks and TSA hasn't been paid to pass some CR or some omnibus bill that is full of billions and trillions in pork, and they don't realize how that's really going to affect people and drive up the debt. So we need to send somebody up there with some business acumen, a veteran that'll look after the veterans, someone who's almost a senior but not a complete senior that'll look after the seniors, and still has young kids and families in my life with my daughter and my grandkids and my youngest who's going off to college. Somebody that's got the full spectrum of experience that could actually connect to every stage that people are in right now and actually be able to communicate. That's what we have to look at. As we look at the other 3 or 4 people in this race, we might have the same platforms. We might have the same party next to our name. We might all claim to be MAGA or mega MAGA, ultra MAGA, extreme. But who is going to be able to create that legislation, get on the House floor, connect with people to forward that legislation and get it over the finish line? And I can't wait for these forums and debates where we get to hear other people try to push things that they believe and see who can actually get the job done.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Mike. And thank you all for tuning into our twice weekly live stream. Please follow us on Facebook and X at RestoreOurRep76. Check us out on YouTube at Restoring Our American Republic-ROAR. Please like and share the program. And remember, if you're unwilling to govern yourself, you will be governed by tyrants. Until next time, God bless you, God bless President Donald J. Trump, and God bless America.